Hello and welcome back to the Foundations Limited Set Review. In this video, I'll be discussing the black cards and how good I think they're going to be in Limited. If you haven't been to one of my set reviews before, there are 5 tiers that I use to evaluate the cards. Essentially, Tier 1 is good, Tier 5 is bad. The tiers are sort of loosely based around which pick in the draft I would take the cards, not necessarily how strong they are in like a vacuum. It sort of is supposed to be a little bit like, oh, okay, I would take the card about this place in the pack, because to be honest with you, that's kind of when comparing card strength is actually relevant. And with that in mind, let's start rating the cards. Abyssal Harvester, 1 black for a 3/2. You can tap it to exile a creature card from a graveyard that was put there this turn. You create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. Then exile all other nightmare tokens you control. So, this is a very interesting card. The obvious problems with it are that it is, a 3-mana 3/2, so that's very bad. And there is a lot of interaction in this set. We'll see some of it later that deals with this efficiently, and so it's gonna receive a low grade. I may move it back down. I originally had it in tier 4. It's double pipped as well, which is bad. But this is like a pretty powerful ability. It is a strong card when it is in play. Like if it were a 2/3, I would be much more excited about it. It's still like your opponent still is like does have to kill it. Like it can work at instant speed. So if your opponent you can leave this up or whatever, and really put something big in their yard or whatever. So it's always kind of a threat to do something. There is sacrifice stuff going on in black, so this provides you a bunch of sack fodder. I don't know. I think there's just a lot of cool stuff you can do with this card. It's definitely a cool card and a fun card to play with. I don't know. Again, the rate test is bad. The upfront rate is pretty horrible. But I mean, it is very threatening, and that is just kind of true of a lot of cards in this set. A lot of cards in this set are, well, I hope I get to untap with it. There's a lot of rares like that. This is another one where it's well, in any other set I would be saying I don't like this at all, but I have bumped it up a little bit because it's in Foundations, and partially because I do sort of believe in the value engine here a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you do need to sort of be doing stuff to make it work. But yeah, I think there's just enough that this is doing. One of the problems with it as well is that it doesn't block ever, and you do need to block sometimes. This thing just can't block. So something to keep in mind. I do think it's kind of a bit difficult to make work. It's certainly not a premium card, but I think it's okay. Arbiter of Woe. Actually, no, hold on. I'm revising. I think I want to revise this back down because I keep looking at the stat line and the mana cost and just thinking there's just no way. I just don't. It's just gonna win less than this. It's just gonna be so easy. Yeah, no, I'm good. The key change for me is just that I don't know. I think that the doing nothing up front is so much worse on your 3-drop than on your big thing. That your after everybody's traded off resources, this one comes down in the middle of the resources being traded off, so it just dies. I feel so often. So I'm not that excited about it. The thing having to die the turn this turn is also really bad. Arbiter of Woe, 4 black for a 5/4 as an additional cost to cast it. Sacrifice a creature. It has flying. When it enters, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. You draw a card and gain 2 life. So very powerful ETB. This set, unlike the last set, actually has more sack enabling. So casting this should be easier than casting the one that was 7 mana, and it's also at 6 mana, so it's actually a little bit stronger. I could even move this up a little more. I think it is a good card. It does, always the Duskmangler comps are around. It's still, I don't think, is quite as good as Duskmangler, although Duskmangler, I should go look up what Duskmangler actually did. Hold on. After a brief excursion into remembering what Duskmangler does exactly, this actually, the thing about Duskmangler that I forgot is that always offers you the option to discard a card or pay for a life, which this does not do. And the reason I'm going to keep this a little bit lower than Duskmangler would be just the fact that it like the sack creature requirement is pretty bad on your 6 drop. Like we just saw this in the last set, and I think it is going to be less punishing in this set by a lot. Like I think it's going to be a lot less punishing, to the point where I've bumped this up. This is also 6 mana instead of 7, but it also doesn't impact the board as much. So there's sort of a give and take with this. I think it's going to be good, but not amazing. Bake into a pie. 2 black for an instant. Destroy target creature. Create a food token. This has just historically been very strong removal. There's life gain stuff is kind of the primary thing you're doing with the foods. So which is not the best, but the food just existing is always a nice thing to have. Should be a very strong removal spell. Billowing Shriekmass. 3 and a black for a 2/3 flyer. When it enters, mill 3 cards, and at its threshold, it gets +2/+1 as long as there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard. So, 4 mana for a 2/3 flyer is very, very bad. When it mills 3, that's okay, but it still doesn't really get you to 7 that easily. At that point in the game, it's going to be a 2/3 flyer until like turn 6 at really like the earliest, I feel like, in most games, and I don't know. I feel like your opponent's going to have a way to deal with this, and it doesn't really block super well, and it takes a long time to set up. But like, I mean, obviously if you get it set up, it's going to be fine, but you can't, there's technically like draws where you could enable this on turn 4, but I'm not even sure that's like, you're kind of sacrificing like everything to do that, and then if you just don't, like it's just too much. Like it's just too much to ask. Blasphemous Edict. 3 black for a sorcerer. You may pay a single black rather than pay the spell's mana cost if there are 13 or more creatures on the battlefield. Each player sacrifices 13 creatures of their choice. So under the Wrath, we have Day of Judgment in the set as well. This is worse than Day of Judgment because it costs 5 instead of 4. Now Sacrifice is better than Destroy by a little bit, but not enough to make up for a whole extra mana. Yeah, I mean, I'm again not a huge Wrath guy, but if you're somebody that really likes Wraths, you can play this one. It's probably going to get overpicked, so like that's like people don't treat Wraths as build arounds, and they just are. So it is that, and if you want to do that, that's fine, but it's generally not something I'm super interested in. Bloodthirsty Conqueror. 3 black for a 5/5. Flying Death Touch. When an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So this is very sort of like sneaky strong effect, because on turn 5 you can play this and maybe get in an attack with something or whatever, and if it just survives for 1 turn, like it's just gonna drain them for 5, which is insane. It essentially has lifelink, but like it's better than lifelink. I don't know. It's to me this looks very strong. Again, obviously it just dies to removal, but like I don't know. So do all the good cards in this set. So I'm sort of, we're readjusting for this set's power level, and I think this is tier 1 in this set. Maybe in some other sets it wouldn't be, but I think this effect is sneaky impactful the turn you play it, because your opponent can't always block it. It's kind of a nice little finisher at the top end, and they have to deal with it as well. So looks like a strong flyer to me. Burglar Rat. 1 and a black for a 1/1. When it enters, each opponent discards a card. Very simple. We've seen this effect many times. It's faded over the years a bit. It has gotten less and less good. It's going to be back in this set, though. It's going to be good again, I think. I could even have put this card in tier 2, but I don't think I'm going to actually draft it that high. But it's going to be a solid black card. Again, with the fact that there's going to be sacrifice stuff happening, I think that this gets to be better than it has been recently. And also there's just some 1 mana 2/1s around, so it is going to be blocking stuff. Crypt Feaster. 3 and a black for a 3/4 menace. It has threshold whenever this creature attacks. If there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So 4 mana 3/4 menace is pretty bad. It's okay, like we've seen it. It's just never really that good. This is not worth doing Threshold for, and it doesn't help you do it at all. So I just don't really see a world where I'm ever playing this. It is a zombie. There's technically some minor zombie stuff happening, but not enough to be worth putting this card in your deck. Diregraph Ghoul, single black for a 2/2 that enters tapped. Yeah, I mean, if you're in the market for a 1-drop, again, there is like some very, very minor zombie stuff happening. It's fine. I don't think it's amazing or anything, but 1 mana 2/2 is above rate for a 1-drop. So you're probably going to be somewhat happy with this. Eaten Alive, single black for sorcery is additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature or pay 3 and a black, exile target creature or planeswalker. So in Midnight Hunt, this was one of the better removal spells because you had a ton of sack fodder available. In this world, in the world that we live in now, there's going to be a lot less sack fodder available, but the fact that this card A, exiles, and B, has the buyout to just pay 5 are both things that are very relevant and important, that sort of set this card a level above similar effects, and I do like this a decent amount. In Midnight Hunt I want to put it in tier 2, and in this format I think I'm gonna put it in tier 3. Exsanguinate, X black sorcery. Each opponent loses X life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. Not for limited, just doesn't do anything. It's way too slow. Yeah, you just never have enough mana to do anything with this. Fake your own death. 1 and a black for an instant. Until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains when this creature dies. Return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and you create a treasure token. We've seen this effect a couple of times. It always tends to be solid, and especially when you have a lot of creatures with ETBs, it plays very well. It plays very well with the rat specifically. Like the rat can block or attack, and then comes back, and your opponent discards another card. It's pretty good there. There are other things as well. Getting the treasure token is relevant. This is sort of like they've tried many versions of this effect. This is kind of the one that has been good in the past, and the other ones tend to not be that great. But I do think this one is fine. Not a card I would prioritize, but a card you can play. Gutless Plunderer. 2 and a black for a 2/2 with Death Touch that has Raid. When this creature enters, if you attack this turn and look at the top 3 cards of your library, you may put one of those cards back on top of your library, put the rest into your graveyard. I don't know why they didn't just have it be like Surveil 3, because this is like so marginally different than Surveil 3. Like, it just could have been Surveil 3. Raid if it enters Surveil 3. This is like marginally worse than that. I don't know. I guess they just want people to put stuff in their yard, is the thing. Like the goal is to be like, hey, people that are getting into the game, we want you should put things into your graveyard when you surveil, because it's actually good for you. Maybe that's what's going on here. But, I don't know. This card is pretty bad. It's pretty below rate. Like, 3 mana 2/2 Death Touch is not great. The ETB is not really that much card selection. Like, you don't draw a card, and you don't really get that much selection, and doesn't mill you that much. Like, it would probably just be better if it said, like, mill 3. It might just be better if it said mill 3. I don't know. It certainly wouldn't be like that much worse if it said that. I don't think this is a card that you want to play in like any deck, really. It's not a completely terrible, because the rate is just not that bad, but I don't think I'm going to play this. High Society Hunter. 3 black for a 5/3 flyer. When this creature attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Whenever another non-token creature dies, draw a card. So I currently have this in tier 2 because it has 3 toughness, but I'm wondering if I should just up that to tier 1 because set power level is lower. This is a strong card. It has the Morbid Opportunist text on it, which is very good. Actually, I think it has slightly worse than Morbid Opportunist text on it, which is, it has to be like non-token, but I don't remember Morbid Opportunist. I just don't remember anything. The fact that it can sack stuff itself is really sick. It has flying. It's a 5/3 flyer for the 5. God, the 3 toughness just scares me, man. There's only, I guess the thing is, like, there's only a braid. A braid is really the only thing that gets you for, like, specifically 3 toughness. So, it is still difficult to deal with. Like, the actual good removal doesn't hit, like, the cheap removal doesn't hit it. I just, I hate stuff that doesn't have an ETB, man. I hate it. I guess it means that your opponent can't trade profitably. I think you can play this on 5. You can attack with your like 3/3 into their 3/3, and they don't want to block. I guess that's. Oh, it's also not limited to once per turn. No, you know what? I'm gonna believe in this. I'm gonna believe in it. I'm a believer. I just think the effect is very powerful when it goes off. It actually, again, the fact that it triggers every single time and not just once per turn is actually kind of something that's selling me. There is some like token. I just think it's doable. I just think it's going to be doable, and I just think that the removal. Do I actually really believe that? Do I believe that the removal's bad? Do I actually believe that it's that bad? This, like, we have Banishing Light, we have Bake into a Pie, Eaten Alive, we have blue balance spells, we have a Braid, we have green bites. I don't know. I might be back to being a hater again. I do think this is probably worse than the 5/5. Like, it's like comparing it to the Mythic. The reason is that the 5/5 just does something immediately and threatens to end the game like very fast. Like, it just is just huge. Like, it's just like, all right, well, I'm 5 5/5 flying lifelink. You just are gonna have to kill it or die. And sometimes the if it does this is a way higher ceiling, I think, but the floor is also way lower. I'm going to leave it here and not get too pressed about it, but could totally see this being wrong. Hungry Ghoul, 1 and a black for a 2/2, to pay 1, sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Yeah, I mean, this is a really nice sack outlet. I think this is going to be a solid black 2-drop, because again, in black, you're going to want to be doing the sack stuff. See this being a good role player, and I think very solid. Infernal Vessel, 2 and a black for a 2/1. When this creature dies, if it wasn't a demon, return to the battlefield under its owner's control with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. It's a demon and it's into its other types. So, 3 mana 2/1, very bad. But if you can sacrifice it or find some way to use it or whatever, I mean, there's just so many ways to sacrifice this. And even you could just chump with it and it's not the worst because you're still getting like a 3 mana 4/3, which is pretty good. I think this is strong. Like, the fact that you're just getting this much power and toughness. So there's no exile removal at 1 and 2 mana that like blows it out. And I just think you're getting like a lot of stats here. Like, a 2/1 is a real thing. It can block a lot of the 2-drops. I know it's not like amazing. But like, your opponent doesn't really want to attack into it. And in black, I do think you basically pretty much want to be doing the sacrifice stuff if you're base black in any deck. This is certainly a card I could just be completely wrong on and just be like, oh, I'm looking at a 3 mana 2/1 and I'm giving it a tier 2 grade. Like, that's a dumb thing to do. It's like, but I mean, I don't know. I think in context, I'm a believer in this card because there's not that much premium sack fodder, and I think this is premium because it also just kind of plays by itself a little bit. Infestation Sage, single black for a 1/1. When it dies, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token with flying. So, Doomed Traveler, it's basically color shifted Doomed Traveler. Doomed Traveler had a really bad showing the last time we saw it. Now, it wasn't Doomed Traveler, it was actually, well, there was Doomed Traveler in SIR, and that card was a house. But then in OTJ, we had the rat that died into a 1/1 that was a mercenary, which was pretty bad. So I think I've put this somewhere in the middle. I put it between those two. Doom Traveler's best days are behind it, but again, sack fodder is the thing that we want in this set. I think this is enough, and especially I think the key difference is the flying. Like, the fact that it does still give flying, I think, is kind of a key point of emphasis for me. And I do think I don't know why I said Doomsday Traveler. We're just gonna ignore that. I need to freaking, now I'm mad. Now I'm upset. I don't always fix the typos, but I fixed this one. Yeah, I mean, I just like it. It's gonna be solid. I don't think it's gonna be like busted or anything, but I do think you're probably gonna be happy to play it, and maybe I'll be wrong again. Maybe I'll just get this one wrong every single time. Liliana, Dreadhorde General, 4 black for a 6 loyalty planeswalker. When a creature you control dies, draw a card. Create as a +1 to create a black 2/2 zombie creature token. As a -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures of their choice. -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. Yep, this card is just very good. Very good planeswalker, very strong, very powerful, very game warping. Going to win pretty much every game that you cast it. Yeah, I just don't really see any other way around it here. Macabre Waltz. 1 and a black for sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, and then discard a card. So this is a card from Shadows of Innistrad. Again, like it doesn't have the madness synergy that it did in that format. Not that like he really wanted to be doing that with this, because he just didn't care. The effect of getting stuff back in this way is just not super good. I don't have it in tier 5 because it's not completely unplayable, because you can find ways to use it, and like Sam Black will, but I don't think you really should play this at a high, like as a premium or really anything. I do think it's not the worst card ever, but I also don't like it very much. Marauding Blight Priest, 2 and a black for a 3/2. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. So we just had this effect in Bloomburrow with the bat guy. The bat guy was a lot better than this because A, it was 2 mana, and B, it was a flyer, and C, it also had the 5 mana mode of make 2 guys that did this. And 2 guys having this effect is actually a lot better than 1. The first version of this effect tends not to be that exciting. Similar to the rare, it is just a 3 mana 3/2 with, dies to like everything and doesn't do a whole lot by itself. I think this one was probably slightly worse because the upside is way lower, but the base is a little bit higher because it's easier to cast. So I put them both in the same tier of tier 4. Midnight Snack, 2 and a black for an enchantment with Raid at the beginning of your end step. If you attack this turn, create a food token, and you can pay 2 and a black to sacrifice this enchantment. Target opponent loses X life, or X is the amount of life you gained this turn. Yeah, so like, if you think about it, so you can pay 3 to sacrifice all your foods. I don't know. This is a weird build around enchantment. You have to attack every turn to make a food, and then you have to do nothing with your 3 mana thing to then be able to attack on like turn 4. It doesn't sound like something that's a recipe for success to me. You then have to be able to gain like 10 life or something. I don't know. I just don't see this working because there's not a whole lot you can do with the food. If there were ways to sacrifice artifacts, I would be more interested. Even then, I wouldn't be that interested, but there really aren't. There's only ways to sacrifice creatures, as far as I can tell. So it's certainly not a card that I'm excited about. 9 Lives Familiar, 1 black for a 1/1. This creature enters with 8 revival counters if you cast it. When this creature dies, if it had a revival counter on it, return it to the battlefield with 1 fewer revival counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. So 3 mana 1/1 that just lives forever, basically. You can jump with it a bunch, you can sacrifice it a bunch. That's fine. The problem is it's just a 3 mana 1/1, so it doesn't really do anything on the board. You really have to be in the market for a lot of sacrificing effects, and I think there's going to be better versions of it. This is one of those ones that's like, well, when it works, it's going to look great, but I don't know how good it actually is, and I think you just would rather play like other cards for the most part. Painful Quandary. 3 black for an enchantment. When an opponent casts a spell, that player loses 5 life unless they discard a card. This card is not very good. It's too expensive. We've seen it before in Brothers War. It was very bad there. I think my all-time record against it is like 4-1 or something. I don't know. I don't remember what it. I think I have lost a game to it. I believe I have lost a game to Painful Quandary, which is a little embarrassing. But there are games where it can do something. The problem is that it doesn't really help you achieve that game state at all, and is very slow. So you just like your opponent has the ability to choose here, and that's really the problem. If you got to choose, it would be a different story, but you don't. So generally, the opponent's going to be able to find a way to get through here. Phyrexian Arena. 1 black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So Phyrexian Arena, similarly to the last card, was printed in Brothers War, I believe the last time, and was very bad there. Actually, had people were surprised at how bad it was. I don't know. The thing is, this format I do expect it to be a little bit better. I bumped it up to tier 3, as you can see here. The format should be a bit slower. I think it's just going to be easier to not die to your own Phyrexian Arena in this format, basically. It still has all the same problems that it always has. It's double pipped. It is an enchantment that doesn't affect the board on turn 3. And, it can kill you sometimes. So, like, it has all those problems still. But in this set, one of the key things that's nice is there is, cheap interaction in red and black, and also, it's not really any in blue. But yeah, red and black has a 1-mana interaction spell at common. It also has Bake into a Pie. Like, there's also just more life gain in this set. Like, life gain is like a theme in this set. There was no life gain, really. There's not a ton of life gain in those other sets, the set that it was most recently reprinted in. So I do think it's going to have a little bit more legs in this format. I still don't think it's super busted or anything, but it is a card that like I'd actively like to try out, as opposed to before being a card that I'm like, I'm not that interested in. Pilfer. 1 black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an on-land card from it. That player discards the card. It's Pilfer. We've seen it many times. It is fine, but never super exciting. It may perform better than this statistically. I don't know. I just don't love it. It's fine. Like, it's a fine card. You can play it, and it will be reasonable. I should probably move it up to tier 3 for the first copy. The problem is just I'm never going to take it like it's a tier 3 card. I'm going to draft it later than that, because you don't have to. It's not nobody's taking this high, so don't. That's why I'm leaving it in tier 4. It's not necessarily a strength rating. It is trying to replicate sort of like where I would take it, which is late. Reassembling Skeleton. 1 black for a 1/1. You can pay 1 black to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So it's an infinite guy that you can just keep paying for to have sack fodder. It's too bad. You don't want to play this in limited. It's too small. Again, in theory, you could like go way over the top with this, but I just don't think that's necessary. I have not put it in tier 5, partially because of my affinity for the card, but it's certainly not something that you want to be putting into your deck at all. And I should just put it in tier 5, but I do like it. Like, I do like the card because of my past, but I'm not even sure it's worthy of a tier 4 rating. Revenge of the Rats. 2 black for a sorcery. Create a tapped 1/1 black rat creature token for each creature card in your graveyard, and it has flashback for 2 black. I mean, this is quite nice. So this is a really cool like build around type spell. There are a couple of problems with it. One major problem is that it makes tokens that are tapped, which is a pretty big cost, because you do like just sometimes die when you like set this up, because all your creatures are supposed to be in the graveyard, and they're not on the battlefield, which means that you might not be able to block for a whole turn when you cast it, which is bad. But then you get to like run it back. The fact that you get to run it back for the same cost, it's going to make the same number of rats. That's pretty good. It's a powerful effect. I mean, you make a lot of rats here. If you make 4 rats, you're going to be very happy. If you make, like that's a power. It's a strong card if it makes 4 rats. I think that's going to be achievable. There's a lot of self-milling. We've seen a decent amount of self-milling. Now, there are questions about whether the cards that self-mill are actually good or not. And for the most part, I think they aren't. But if there are some better ones, I think this is kind of going to be a nice little engine. With that being said, it is kind of a build-around card. I don't think it's just going to be busted, but I think that there certainly is there's a path to seeing this just be very, very strong. Rise of the Dark Realms. 7 black. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. So, 9 mana to get all the creatures back. You just don't really get to 9 in limited all that much. So there's just not really a space for this. Yeah, I mean, it just is not. Like, you just don't want to be putting cards in your deck that don't do anything until turn 9. It's just too much to pay. Rune Scarred Demon. 5 black for a 6/6 flying. When this creature enters, search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So the reason this is so low is, again, the mana cost. It is 7 mana for a 6/6 flying. That doesn't do anything that is like board impacting when it enters. Like, it obviously makes a large flyer, but your opponent is still allowed to attack you. They can still remove this. They get a whole turn before you get your spell that you tutored. So, I mean, it's going to be good. It's actually like a good. There is a reanimate spell, which we'll get to, but it is not good on its face. I don't think it's fine. Like, it's not terrible, but I don't think it's something you want to be taking early, just because there's just other ways to end the game. Sanguine Siphoner. 1 and a black for a 1/3. When this creature attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So, reprint essentially of the card from Bloomburrow that did this was a lizard. There's about as much stuff that it works with. It was fine in that set. I would probably put it in tier 4. I've bumped it up a bit because, again, the creatures are a bit worse. So in theory, this should be a bit better. There's actually, I think, more life-related stuff in this set across more colors. Like, it was just black-white in that set. There's black-white in this set. But I think you can also find this in, like, no, it's probably just black-white again, huh? I don't know. Whatever. I think it's fine. I think this is a fine card. I probably should just move it back down though, because but it's a 2 and this set's a little bit weaker. Yeah, let's just leave it here. Seeker's Folly. 2 and a black for a sorcery. Choose 1. Target opponent discards 2 card. Creatures your opponent's control get -1/-1 until end of turn. Now, Mind Rots are not very good. The interesting thing with this is, should I bump it up? I mean, Mind Rot is tier 5. Like, I would put that in tier 5. This one, I've bumped it up already. The question is, do I bump it up further? Because the -1/-1 buyout mode actually is kind of nice. Generally, when your Mind Rot isn't good, it's when your opponent has a bunch of creatures in play. The question is, how often does this answer that problem for you? Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of thinking about it. I'm kind of thinking about moving it up. It still kind of has all the problems that you'd expect, where, like, how many 1/1s are there going to be around? A decent amount of 1 toughness stuff. There's some 1 toughness stuff for 2 mana. There's some other one. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna go hot take and put this at like a tier 3. So yeah, we've made the correction here. I just think that, Mind Rot is close to playable, and I think this other mode is enough. Like, if it just kills something or kills 1 or 2 things, even if it just removes their opponent's 2-drop or something, like, I don't know. Like, it's probably still fine, and I think the Mind Rot mode is still there and still, doing something. Soul Shackled Zombie. 3 and a black for a 4/2. When this creature enters, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. If at least 1 creature card was exiled this way, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. So this is really sick. most of the time you're going to have a target for this on turn 4. It's not going to be every single game, but the average limited game involves there being a creature in the graveyard by turn 4. It's not always true, but in most spots, there's going to be a way to get a creature into the graveyard by turn 4, and this is just so strong because it is also graveyard hate sneaky. Like this card, like the fact that it drains for 2, and it doesn't, like, you don't have to just exile the creature. Like if there's something you actually want to exile from the graveyard, you can exile that and a creature, and you still just drain for 2. Like it's just so powerful to be able to do that. We saw this with like Diregraph Scavenger in the past. Now the one thing with this one, it is worse because it is a 4/2 instead of a 2/3 Death Touch. 2/3 Death Touch, a lot better stat line in this type of spot, but 4/2 is doing similar things to the 2/3 Death Touch, and I think it's still going to be a strong common. Stab, single black, instant. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Very strong. It's going to be solid removal. You're going to play it. -2/-2, generally better than dealing 2 damage to something. So, gonna play. You're gonna take this pretty high, and you're gonna play it. Tiny Bones, Bauble Burglar, 1 and a black for a 1/3. When an opponent discards a card, exile it from their graveyard with a stash counter on it. During your turn, you may play lands you don't own with stash counters on them from exile. And you may play cards you don't own with stash counters. You spend mana of any type to cast those spells, and then 3 and a black to tap it. Each opponent discards a card, activate only as a sorcery. So the 4 mana mode is not a thing. You have to be enabling this in other ways. But as we've seen so far, there are other ways to enable it. Like there's the Mind Rod and there's the Rat. So it's, certainly a thing you can do. Your opponent has control over what you get to play. So like they're the one discarding the cards. So certainly has its foibles. It's like a fine 2 mana 1/3. It's just going to sit around. Whatever. Activating this seems like you're probably just losing in a lot of spots. Like I don't think you can pay 4 mana to make your opponent discard a card as a sorcery. So, I think that's probably not going to work. But maybe it's doable. I just think it's pretty small, but I don't think it's unplayably bad. Tragic Banshee. 4 and a black for a 5/3 with Morbid. When this creature enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. If a creature died this turn, that creature gets -13 and -13 instead. So I've seen these type of effects where they give -1/-1 or kill something, depending on what's happened. This one is particularly, I think, strong just because, like, like anything where you get a buyout mode of just being like, okay, well, -1/-1 meant your thing, and we'll move on with our lives. Like anything where you get that mode tends to be like pretty decent, and I expect this to be pretty good. Like seems like a very strong card. We do know that Morbid. Like if I just treat this like Morbid doesn't exist, and then like you never get the -13, which is kind of a good way to think about Morbid because it tends to not perform super well. It's still a good card, but probably not busted. And I think sometimes you are going to actually trigger the Morbid, and you have some control over that with sack outlets and stuff. So yeah, I do think it's going to be pretty nice. Like this is going to be a pretty solid uncommon. I feel like it's a 5-drop that is worth taking somewhat early. Vampire Gourmand. 1 and a black for a 2/2. When this creature attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, draw a card, and this creature can't be blocked this turn. This is really nice. So it's first of all, it's a good 2-drop. Not a ton of those in the set. Secondly, it makes itself as unblockable. Pretty cool. It also draws a card for like a sacrificed creature. It doesn't have to be a non-token creature. Enables all your sacrifice synergies for 0 mana. I don't know. This just seems like it kind of does it all. Like this just seems like one of the better 2-drops. I really like this card. I think it's going to be very strong and play extremely well. Vampire Nighthawk. 1 black for a 2/3 flying Death Touch lifelink. One of the originals. Again, if you're somebody that's of my Magic age, this is the one to look at. This is one to look out for, and happy to see it back. It's certainly is aged a bit, but I do think this card is still going to be very strong in this set. I've put it in tier 2, which is probably a bit optimistic due to the mana cost of being 1 black black, but still a very, very strong. In fact, a card that is going to probably be a little overdrafted, and I'm kind of sad to say that because it is strong, but it just is going to be hard to find in the draft pods early on, I think. But it's a good card. It's definitely a good card. Vampire Soulcaller, 4 and a black for a 3/2 flying. This creature can't block. When this creature enters, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Can't block is really bad on your 5 mana spell. That's the lesson here. I know they put it on there so you can't just get 2 of these and just go block, 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 block forever. That was a guardrail that did not need to be put on this card because it sure is a 5 mana 3/2 flyer. That is just not good enough. Even if this was a 5 mana 3/2 flyer that drew a card, it wouldn't be good enough. So I don't think I'm going to be playing this at any point. Vengeful Bloodwitch, 1 and a black for a 1/1. When this creature or another creature you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is, Cutthroat, I think, is Zulaport Cutthroat, essentially. Yeah, I mean, these effects are fine. It's a build around the effect. There's going to be a lot of creatures dying. Obviously, this thing dies really easily, but at least it's going to drain your opponent for 1 when they kill it. Okay, if they don't kill it, you're probably going to start getting your engine going, and then they can't really attack you through it. The problem with it, of course, is that it is a 2-drop that doesn't do anything, but on the board, that is, by itself. So with that problem noted, I'm going to say that it's fine and that it's not premium, but I think you can play it. And it'll be decent in your deck. Zombify. 3 and a black, sorcery, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Yeah, I mean, it's a 4 mana reanimate. They don't typically do 4 mana, but they have done it in the last set, and it wasn't great. I don't think it's going to be great in this set either. It is an effect that people really like. I'm glad we're kind of sort of moving in the direction of having reanimates be playable. Still don't think we're there, but we're moving in that direction, which is nice. Decent card. And the last black card is Zul Asker, Lich Lord. 1 and a black for a 2/2 with Ward, pay 2 life. And you may tap it to cast target zombie creature card from your graveyard this turn. As I was saying, there's some very minor zombie things. This is the very minor zombie thing you can do in this set. There are not that many zombies. So you basically aren't going to cast anything with this. It is a 2-drop, 2/2 that has Ward, pay 2 life. And if you build around it a little bit, it has some upside. So I have moved it. I should actually move it down to tier 4 because there's just not that many zombies. If we just go look here, black is going to be the class that has zombies. Here's a zombie. This is the best one, probably. This is actually enough reason to keep it in tier 3. This card being strong is enough reason to keep it in tier 3. Here's 2. So actually there's 3, and then this one's unplayable. Yeah, so there's some zombies. There's not literal 0 zombies, so I will leave it in tier 2. Just because it's there are some targets at common, and there are actually some of black's better commons. So for that reason, I will leave it here in tier 3. I said tier 2, I meant 3. Yeah, I mean, pay 2 life on Word 2 is not prohibitive. So I think, especially given that the 1 mana interaction kills it, it's not going to be amazing, but I think it'll be okay. And that's it. That's it for the black cards. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, there are other set review videos on this channel. There will be more to come for this set. Please go check them out, and I will see you next time.